Hello! Welcome back to How to Win at Slay the Spire. This is my series taking a brand new account from Ascension 0 all the way up to Ascension 20 on all characters, killing the heart every run that is available. For those of you who don't know, I am Jorbs. I've been streaming this game for 4 years or something, ever since Silent came out, basically. I've been streaming this game since before Defect was a character. And I have been playing at the highest difficulty the entire time. I have had a bunch of different achievements, world records, and other types of things like that. But one thing I've never done is sat down and made a series that tries to get someone from the very beginning of understanding the game all the way to a point where they're understanding what I'm thinking about as I go through fights. I can't promise you that this series will make you start setting world records in Slay the Spire, but what I'm hoping it will do is get you to a point where you understand what I'm thinking about as I'm making my decisions, going through runs, and you can play around with thinking about those things yourself. Hopefully that'll be fun. I think Slay the Spire is a really great game, so in my opinion it will be. This is Zephyr, by the way. This is Zephyr Helps. So, we're working our way through Ascension 1. Today I'm going to be playing an Ascension 1 silent run, but first I figured since Ascension 1 introduced more elites, we'd take a look at all of the elites in the game and just talk about what they did and get a sense for how you're thinking about winning those fights. For the Ironclad run, I looked at the Act 1 elites, and for the silent run, I'm going to be looking at the Act 2 elites. So, let's start with Slavers. I'd say Slavers is one of the most defining fights in the entire game of Slay the Spire. It's a really big deal to be able to survive the Slavers fight. In a lot of your runs, that's not an easy thing to do. So, the first enemy in this fight, there are 3. The frontmost one is the Blue Slaver. Now, the order of the enemies does matter because they attack from left to right. So, if you have like a static discharge in play, or a buffer charge, or an artifact charge, there are a variety of things which will be affected by which order the enemies attack you in. Anyway, the Blue Slaver has 46 to 50, upgrading to 48 to 52 HP. It stabs you for 12, upgrading to 13 damage. It rakes you for 7, upgrading to 8 damage, and applying 1, upgrading to 2 weak. And its AI has a 40% chance of rake and a 60% chance of stab, with some clarifications that it can't use the same move 3 times in a row, and then later, when it upgrades to applying 2 weak with rake, it can't use rake twice in a row. This is a fairly simple enemy. It's going to be a big deal sometimes for it to weaken you on turn 1. In fact, there are some decks for which that is a really big deal in this fight, whether you roll the 40% chance of rake on turn 1, or you manage to dodge it possibly for 2 turns in a row. That can massively change whether you deal enough damage to win the fight or not. But other than that, like, this is generally going to not be a priority to kill in the fight. You might kill it last, or because it has less health than the Taskmaster, you might kill it second, but at that point it doesn't really matter that much. The Taskmaster is the middle enemy, has 54 to 60 HP, upgrading to 57 to 64, and it has 1 attack, so that's easy to keep track of. The Scouring Whip, which deals 7 damage. At high difficulties, it will also gain at 1 strength, so it will deal 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, etc. And it shuffles 1, upgrading to 2, later upgrading to 3 wounds into your discard pile. This is a very game-warping effect. This enemy has too much health for you to kill it very quickly most of the time, and it puts, at high difficulty, 3 wounds into your discard pile. So this effect, sort of by itself, without even having to think about anything else in the game, very strongly influences your decision on how many cards to put into your deck as you go through Act 1 and the first half of Act 2. Because if you decide to skip tons and tons of cards and have a very small deck, Scouring Whip is going to make your hands have very, very many wounds on them, starting from like turn 3 of this fight. So that's something to look out for sure. The back enemy, and generally the first one you want to focus down, is the Red Slaver. Red Slaver has 46 to 50, upgrading to 48 to 52 HP, which is exactly the same as the Blue Slaver, the range. It can stab you for 13, upgrading to 14 damage. It can scrape you for 8, upgrading to 9 damage, and applying 1, upgrading to 2 vulnerable. That's the really scary part. Vulnerable is not great when you're being attacked for 20 plus damage in a fight, when you have 3 enemies that are attacking you every turn, pretty much. And it also has this very unique effect called Entangle. The attack Entangle applies one Entangled, which is a debuff that makes it so you can't play attacks. As a debuff, you can block this with an artifact charge. You also can still deal damage with Crippling Cloud or Noxious Fumes or potions or whatever, but your attack cards just will not work. And also, if you try to block it with an artifact charge, keep in mind that the blue slaver, which attacks earlier than this, has a 40% chance of using Rake, which applies a debuff. So your artifact charge is not guaranteed to actually block Entangle for you in this fight. And if you show up in the fight with a Clockwork Souvenir providing you an artifact charge on turn 1, it's quite unlikely that it's going to last to block the Entangle. So that Entangle can be a pretty big deal, and because of Scrape and Entangle, you're typically going to target the Red Slaver first in this fight, plus the fact that it's lower HP than the Taskmaster. So, the AI starts with Stab always, which is gracious of the devs. That's true even at highest Ascension. That's not the scariest thing the enemy could do, right? The enemy could Scrape or Entangle you first, and that would be much more threatening, but even at high Ascension, where the enemy AIs are edited to be more threatening, the Red Slaver was deemed to be too threatening if it did that. After it stabs, it has a 25% chance of entangling each turn, and goes Scrape, Scrape, Stab, eventually upgrading to Scrape, Stab at high Ascension until it entangles. And after it entangles, it has a 55% chance to Scrape, 45% chance to Stab. Neither can be used 3 times in a row. Eventually upgrading to Scrape cannot be used 2 times in a row. That's a lot. That's a lot to try to keep track of. My simplification of that for you is that this is going to hit you hard on turn 1, and then it's always going to have a chance to entangle you. Eventually it will make you vulnerable. And yeah, that's perhaps a more functional way of thinking about this enemy than trying to understand every single thing about its AI. If you get lucky, you might not get made vulnerable for a little while, but it will eventually make you vulnerable if it stays alive. In practice, you don't want this staying alive for very long, so. The tips for tackling the Slaver's fight. 1. This might seem like an area of effect fight, but the Red Slaver, the rightmost enemy, is by far the most dangerous, and often killing it quickly will make the rest of the fight quite simple. We're in Act 2 now, so having 2 enemies who are attacking you for 20 damage total every turn isn't necessarily the end of the world for your deck. If you are able to weaken them and make 10 block every turn, you're not taking very much damage from them really at that point. So making sure that you don't get hit with Vulnerable and don't get hit with Entangle are the really big things in the fight, I would say. Point 2, wins from this fight can heavily punish decks with few cards. Like I said earlier, the fact that you're getting 3 wounds shuffled into your discard pile every turn from the start of this fight means that if you're not taking good value cards going through Act 1 and 2, you are going to have to be very careful about not getting your hand just completely flooded with wounds in ways that will kill you in this fight. I would say that the way that my play is calibrated at Ascension 20, this isn't actually a very big deal for me much of the time. I guess I take enough value cards that it doesn't really come up, but if you are trying to play a style which tries to keep your deck thinner than what I do, this is one of the very, very threatening things to be keeping an eye on. Tip I have for Slavers is to prepare with potions, because I think this is one of the most threatening fights in the game. If you had to pick one fight in the entire game that you were allowed to use potions on, and you couldn't use potions on any other fight, I think picking Slavers would not be an unreasonable choice. The Heart fight would also be a reasonable choice. I think those are my top 2. So yeah, definitely keep an eye on potions that are going to be useful in this fight. Fire Potion, for example, Vulnerable Potion to help you deal with the Red Slaver as quickly as possible. Perhaps a Gambler's Brew to get you to your most important card if you have a Corpse Explosion or something like that. There are definitely some similarities between this fight and how the Sentries fight plays, which I talked about in the last Ironclad run. But this fight adds Weak, Vulnerable, Entangle. The dazes turn into wounds, so Feel No Pain doesn't create block with them anymore or anything like that. And you get attached for much more every turn. So much, much, much more difficult fight. That said, even though it's much more difficult, some of the stuff that you learned in dealing with the Sentries fight, you can apply here. For example, getting rid of the most threatening enemy first is an example, instead of trying to kill them all at once. All right, next elite, the Book of Stabbing. The Book of Stabbing has 160 to 162 HP, upgrading to 168 to 172, fairly narrow range. And it has a passive ability, Painful Stabs. Shuffle 1 wound into the discard pile each time you receive unblocked attack damage. So again, Act 2 has this theme of putting wounds into your deck. Book of Stabbing has a multi-stab, which deals 6, upgrading to 7 times N damage, where N equals... Yeah, I mean, that's a lot, right? So at low ascension, N is going to be 2 plus the number of multi-stabs used so far that fight. So the first time it's 2, the second time it's 3, the third time it's 4, the fourth time it's 5, etc. Whereas at high ascension, it turns into the turn number plus 1. So what that functionally means is that at low ascension, it goes up in its times attacking you every time it uses the multi-stab attack, where at high ascension, it goes up in its times attacking you every time you end turn, which is more. At low ascension, getting single stab, its other attack, which deals 21 upgrading to 24 damage, is a nice respite, and your multi-stab coming in on the turn afterwards won't be much more threatening than it was last time. Whereas at high ascension, getting single stab can hit you really hard right now for 24, and then the next time you get multi-stabbed is going to be for 2 times more than it was last time. The AI here is 85% multi-stab, but not 3 times in a row, 15% single stab, but not 2 times in a row. So the variance on the AI for this fight is basically you don't want to get single stabbed early at high ascension because multi-stab is going to be ticking up anyway. So you want your single stab to come at you on turn 3 usually. So it goes 7 times 2, 7 times 3, then it single stabs you for 24, and then it will go 7 times 5, and hopefully by then you are like fully scaled up and able to deal with that, or maybe even just killing the enemy around about then. If you do get the single stab early, if you get like single stab turn 1, you'll get attacked for 24, then 21, then 28, likely, and then you got single stab for 24 again, which does change which turn the damage really starts to ramp up, because you'd be getting attacked for 35 instead of 24 on that turn, but then the next turn you get attacked for 42. So you maybe get one more turn to kill it as compensation for getting attacked for 24 instead of 14 on turn 1, and for getting attacked for 35 instead of 24 on turn 3. I said that wrong. 28 instead of 24 on turn 3. Anyway, my cat is yowling at me and it's irritating me. I'm sorry. The Book of Stabbing tips. One of the most significant moments in the run for effects which interact with multi-attacks to shine. Disarm, Piercing Wail, Malaise, Static Discharge. Thorns, either from Thorns Potion or Bronze Scales or Caltrops. Yeah, this is sort of the multi-attack enemy in Slay the Spire. The Heart at the end of the run has a times 15 attack, and so this is all like sort of true for the Heart too. But by the time that you reach the Heart, often like the rules of the game have sort of broken down. Like your deck can go infinite, for example, at which point like whether you disarm the Heart or not doesn't matter anywhere near as much. At this point in Act 2, it's very unlikely that you're going to be going infinite to kill Book of Stabbing, so a disarm to massively reduce the damage output of the enemy is a really big deal. Because this fight's only about one enemy, debuffs can be particularly effective. I'm thinking vulnerable, I'm thinking weak. If you're fighting 3 enemies, then playing Bash on one of them is only going to increase your damage against that one enemy, but if you're fighting 1 enemy, then playing Bash on it will increase your damage against, well, also only that one enemy, but it happens to be every enemy in the fight, so all of your future damage is increased as long as the vulnerable applies. And the same goes for weak, where instead of reducing the damage of one enemy in the fight, it's reducing the damage of every enemy in the fight, because there's only one enemy in the fight. It's the difference between weak making you get attacked for... if you're getting attacked for 35 in this fight, weak makes you get attacked for 25 instead, which is really nice. Whereas in the Slavers fight, if you're getting attacked for 35, weak makes you get attacked for like 31 instead, which is much less significant. And then the wounds from Painful Stabs can be quite threatening in reward decks, which only have to complete 1 deck cycle to win the fight, another factor pushing you toward building a fairly large deck for Act 2. You do want to be careful. Sometimes your deck is going to get a lot of wounds in it if you don't draw good block cards on turns where you're getting attacked. And so you want to make sure that if you have a deck that isn't great at blocking, it has enough attacks that it will be able to draw enough damage to kill the Book of Stabbing. instead of like only having a few attacks and then it reshuffles and all of a sudden instead of drawing the attacks it's drawing wounds, at which point you may spend another 1 or 2 turns in the fight and it may even be lethal. All right, and the third elite fight in Act 2 is Gremlin Leader and her friends. This is a lot of stuff. This slide is just Gremlin Leader's AI. I'm not going to talk about the minions here because we've already been talking for like too long probably anyway. We'll talk about the little gremlins when I talk about Act 1 hallway fights, which will happen in a later video. They're more relevant in Act 1 hallway fights anyway. By the time you get to Act 2, you can sort of deal with all of them. Just sort of incidentally, your deck should be good enough to deal with all of them without thinking too much about what their differences are. The Gremlin Leader has 140 to 148, upgrading to 145 to 155 HP, and can use Encourage, Rally, and Stab. Very different abilities. Encourage gives +3, upgrading to 4, upgrading to 5 strength to all enemies, and gives all minions 6, upgrading to 10 block. Rally summons 2 random gremlins, and Stab deals 6 times 3 damage. And this is, I think, the only damage attack in the game so far that doesn't have a damage upgrade on it for High Ascension, which is kind of interesting. But Encourage gives more strength at High Ascension, so that's basically where the damage upgrade for Stab comes from. Gremlin Leader's AI, I would say this is the fight where understanding the enemy's AI and how to manipulate it is the most important. Definitely out of all of the fights we've looked at so far, and possibly out of the entire game. Because Gremlin Leader does different things depending on how many minions are alive, and you get to choose how many minions are alive by deciding whether or not to kill them. If there are 0 minions alive, there's a 75% chance of Rally, which will summon 2 minions, and a 25% chance of Stab, which will deal you a bunch of damage. So a lot of the time, what you want to do is kill all the minions to try to make it as unlikely as possible that you get stabbed. Because getting stabbed lots of times in this fight is going to likely be the way that you die in this fight. The attack looks innocuous, 6 times 3 damage, but by the time that Gremlin Leader has 10 strength, that's 16 times 3, and that's a lot more. If there's 1 minion, and the last move was Encourage, so the last move was the give everyone strength, Gremlin Leader has a 50% chance of summoning 2 gremlins, and a 50% chance of stabbing. So 50-50 on whether you got attacked. If there's 1 minion and the last move was Stab, Gremlin Leader has a 62.5% chance of Rally and a 37.5% chance of Encourage. So there's another thing going on here where Gremlin Leader can't use the same move twice in a row. Because of that, if you look at this, if there's 1 minion in the... If Gremlin Leader has just stabbed, Gremlin Leader has a 62.5% chance of Rally and a 37.5% chance of Encourage if there's 1 minion left alive, right? But if Gremlin Leader has just stabbed and you kill the last minion to bring it down to 0 minions, Gremlin Leader has a 100% chance of rallying. So sometimes in this situation, if Gremlin Leader is attacking you and there's 1 minion alive, you may want to leave a minion alive to have a chance of Gremlin Leader using Encourage instead of Rally. And then you can kill the last minion and have a 75% chance of Rally on the next turn and hope that you dodge the 25% chance of getting stabbed. Anyway, there are lots and lots of ways to navigate through this AI tree as you go through the fight, and you check your draw pile constantly and try to work out when you can block and when you can't and stuff like that. And it's a mess. It's a lot to be keeping track of. This is my favorite fight in the game because of how much interaction there is between the player and the enemy because of this AI tree. If there are 2 or more minions, there's a 66% chance of Encourage and a 34% chance of Stab. And yeah, in general, cannot use the same move twice in a row. So anytime that there's like at 0 minions where it's Rally or Stab, that's going to always be Rally if Gremlin Leader just used Stab. At 2+ minions where there's Encourage or Stab, it's going to always be Encourage if Gremlin Leader just used Stab. It's going to always be Stab if Gremlin Leader just used Encourage. Yeah. Okay, cool. So, tips. I'm not going to be able to explain the entirety of this fight to you right now. Sorry, it's too complicated. However, As I was saying, you can manipulate Gremlin Leader's AI by changing how many minions are alive, and this can be useful for forcing an attack if you'll be intangible, trying to avoid an attack if it will be devastating, etc. There's a decent amount you can do here. I think that one of the most common and most empowering feeling use cases is deliberately leaving minions alive to make Gremlin Leader attack you when you know that you'll be intangible because you have Instance Burner coming in, or you're going to draw an Apparition or something like that. That feels really good. And another example would be if Gremlin Leader has 2 minions and is attacking you and you have a Wraithform Plus in hand. If you play that Wraithform Plus, as long as you don't kill the minions, you know that Gremlin Leader will attack twice into your intangible while you have 3 turns of intangible. Stuff like that is good to be keeping an eye on. Another note, area of effect damage is often the key to easily winning this fight. If you're able to kill the minions, Gremlin Leader is much less likely to attack you, won't attack you as often, and obviously the minions aren't there to attack you either. Your deck doesn't need to block every turn for this fight, it just needs to be able to deal damage most turns and block every now and again. But blocking for 10 every turn in this fight isn't that big a deal. It's a bigger deal to be able to block for 40 sometimes, and you don't need to block the rest of the time. So because of that, things like Panic Button and Runic Pyramid are very strong in this fight. I would say that if the Slavers fight tests your deck's ability to do lots of damage quickly, and the Book of Stabbing fight tests your deck's ability to deal with one very threatening enemy with perhaps debuffs like Malaise or Weak or whatever, and a good amount of damage, the Gremlin Leader fight tends to test your abilities to manipulate your deck so that you're playing the right cards on the right turns. And that is the thing that's a really big deal here. So yeah, something like Panic Button plus Runic Pyramid is very strong for this fight. That combination is very strong in lots of places, but in this fight in particular, if you have Panic Button and Runic Pyramid, you'll see how powerful Panic Button plus Retain can be. And like I said, I'll talk about the individual gremlins at a later time. Right now, this is enough. Let's get into the run. All right. Okay, here we go. I have not worked out how to make the cat leave me alone yet, but I tried as much as I'm going to right now. Let's play a silent run. How to win 70 out of 70 HP, 99 gold. I like the right path in this act. Interesting act where there's one path on the left side and one path on the right side. Map generation in this game is really interesting. It's a 7x15 grid. Is that right? 7x15? I believe so, yeah. It's a 7x15 grid, and the game just draws 6 random paths starting at the bottom and going to the top, basically. They're not allowed to cross over from left to right, so a path couldn't go from here to here when this path already exists, but that's the basic idea. So what happened here is it drew this one and this one and this one, and then the other 3 started in the same place. So one of them would have gone boop, boop, and then maybe the first one went this way and the second one went this way. And then over on this side, we have 4 paths. So here's 1, 2, 3, and 4. And they happen to all come back to the same place by chance and then come out here. So yeah, understanding the map generation algorithm doesn't really do much for you because you can already see the result that happened, but it's sort of interesting. Interesting to understand how it works. I'm going to put the cat in a different room so he doesn't sit next to me and yowl. Okay. All right. The experience of having a cat yelling at you while you're trying to focus on something and giving the cat everything that you can and having it keep yowling, it's not fun. Looking between the 2 very separate groups of paths, this left one has actually pretty similar stuff to the right one, honestly. This is 3 Holy Fights store event into an elite and all this stuff. There are reasons to care about the order exactly of these nodes, but they're not a big enough deal for me to get into them right now. This path has 1 less campfire. I think it has more late act question marks, which is appealing, but you do pay a campfire to get that. Anyway, having understood that, let's take a look at the whale bonus. Transform a card, obtain a random common relic, obtain a random rare relic for all your gold. I think that on low ascension, just taking a common relic is going to pretty reliably give you a little bit of a boost. Should be plenty. I think I'll take the left path because it has more campfires. That makes sense to me. Jawworm fight. Against Jawworm as silent in general, you want to just block a lot. Like, just don't take damage. I actually just played 20 fights against Jawworm with Silent Starter deck at Ascension 20 to see whether it was right to trade health for damage often. And what I found was it's like sometimes right to trade 2 HP for 6 damage, but you shouldn't be like trading 4 HP for 6 damage very often at all. And at low Ascension especially, I suspect that you just always play a defend if it blocks at all in any way. I think I've basically solved the fight for you. There you go. Well-laid plans, Caltrops, Endless Agony. So it is a Guardian Act. Caltrops would deal decent damage. Caltrops, unfortunately, is just sort of an awkward card. It deals its damage very slowly. There are a good number of fights where it doesn't deal much damage at all. So the pick for me is between Well-laid plans and Endless Agony. Endless Agony is like a solid damage card. Well-laid plans is a solid card manipulation card. I'm going to go with the Well-laid plans. I think I already have enough for the elite fight, pretty much. I don't think I get to remove a strike at this point, though. But yeah, with Pen Nib and a decent potion, I think I'm already at a point where I don't have to worry too much about the elite fight, and so I don't have to go to a store. The problem with going to a store there is I only have 115 gold. And so I'm just not likely to get very much out of using that floor that way. Like, I'm not going to buy a ton of stuff in the store or whatever. So instead of doing that, I can go to a different floor. And like you saw, when I went here, I just got a card remove for 7 HP, which is 7 HP is a lower cost than buying a card remove in the store for 75. So I'm very happy to get that result. Guardian doesn't do super well against deadly poison. Guardian also doesn't do super well against poison stab for the same reasons, although they're a little bit less pronounced. Basically, like, poison damage is just going to be good in long fights. I do have a Pen Nib, which likes poison stab more than deadly poison. I think I should take a damage card for the elite fight coming up. Even if I have good potions, I still don't want to like take 40 for no reason. So yeah, let's just take a poison stab. Poison stab versus deadly poison is an interesting choice, and which one you pick actually often has consequences you might not think about. Like Artivore, for example, really doesn't want you to be playing attacks every turn, and Silent can often have a deck that deals a lot of damage without having to play attacks using poison cards. But if you have poison stab, well, that happens to be an attack, so that stops working. There are some other examples which I can't think of right now. I'm going to take a dagger spray as well. I had it in my head, but then I like played the fight and got distracted and confused. Escape Plan was the card that I was going to mention. Escape Plan gains block if your top card of your deck is a skill, basically, and this is an attack, not a skill. So Silent sometimes is inclined toward having more skills in her deck and fewer attacks. On the other hand, we're in Act 1, being able to kill Gremlin Knob is a pretty big deal. I played a strike there to put 1 charge on Pen Nib. And so because it's a pretty big deal to be able to kill Gremlin Knob, there's a strong argument for taking the attack instead of the skills, since skills make it so that Gremlin Knob has more strength when you play them. I'm a little bit short on damage for this fight, even at low Ascension. I think I'm actually going to play Neutralize here and hold the strike. I think I want the 3 damage from Neutralize, and to get to play the strike this turn a bit more than I want the Neutralize. This is kind of odd. I think it's fine to do this. Actually hold a defend in case I want it next turn. I'm getting a reshuffle with a lot of damage cards in my hand, which means they won't be in my next draw pile, which is another somewhat awkward thing. But I lined Pendub up with the Dagger Spray that I upgraded, so that's good. That's largely why I chose to upgrade Dagger Spray, so that it would be better with Pendub. I'm going to go ahead and use this potion as well here. Because, yeah, the site is a bit scary. Oh, I just remembered that Lagavulin only gives you -1 strength and dexterity at this difficulty. This is not actually very scary at all. I take it back. I take it back. I still don't think it's unreasonable to have played the fight a little bit defensively, though. And as a consequence of it, I am going to end the fight and still have a lot of health left over, which is really nice for going through the rest of the act. One of the things in Act 1 is that a lot of question marks ask you to spend health to do something, and so because of that, having a lot of health banked is really helpful. All right, Pennib. We want to just throw Pennib away there because in general, a simple heuristic to think is the higher the Pennib number is as you end the fight, the better it will be for next fight. It's not always exactly the case, but in general, something like that is true. Something sort of close to that. I'm being offered 3 damage cards here. The only one that I'm really interested in is Skewer, because Skewer synergizes with Pennib in such a cool way. I could upgrade it. I do have a well-laid plans, which is sort of nice with it. Sure, let's take a Skewer. I don't feel like I take Skewer very often at High Ascension. It just doesn't quite do as much as I want to be doing with my energy. But it is a really cool card, and it's fun to get to take it at Low Ascension. And the way it interacts with Pennib is really interesting. I could have dealt 1 less damage there by playing a Strike into Skewer instead of just the Skewer, and I would have had 1 more Pennib charge. So, like, that's a thing to think about, is that I could have made that choice. I didn't, but it's fun to be able to make different choices sometimes. Calculated Gamble is one of the strongest cards in the game, just straight up. Very happy to take a Calculated Gamble. Vajra is excellent, a little bit of strength to go with my Pennib. I'm just going to upgrade the Skewer. And so now we can line up Skewer and deal 66 damage with it. If things go well. Yeah, here you go. Goodbye, enemy. That's what we were building for, and it sort of worked out perfectly. That was nice. Yeah, there's something to, like, recognizing that you can have synergies in this game that don't have to, like, win the end game or anything. It can just be, like, a synergy that you built that was relevant for the first, like, 20 floors. And you just get to enjoy it. The cards are fine on their own. And later on in the run, where it stops being enough to be relevant, you just, you know, it's not a big deal. Being able to quickly recognize synergies like that can help you a lot in getting through your Act 1 Elite fights and so on and so forth, though. The only card I'm really interested in here is Deflect. I don't really have any card draw for it, though. If I had, like, an Acrobatics, I might think about Deflect, but I have no card draw yet, so there's not that much appeal to taking a 1-cost attack that I can see. This is why we have a Dagger Spray, this exact fight. Here, I'm actually going to wait until next turn to try to get 1 more charge on Pennib. If I draw Neutralize, I can do that. Alright. There's the Acrobatics I was just talking about, but it's up against a Footwork, which is one of Silent's strongest cards for sure. I actually think this is close. I feel like most people playing Silent with a, like, moderate to good understanding of Silent might think that this is easily Footwork. Footwork is a game-winning power, basically. It's very, very strong for your backflips and like to be blocking for enough that you can spend 4 energy on them and not take damage from the boss gauntlet. But I actually think Acrobatics is the more powerful pick here. I think that the synergy package that Silent has based around discard And just the strength of drawing cards makes acrobatics very, very, very good. So let's just take the acrobatics and I can like show you what it does instead of taking the footwork and me showing you how to play silent with footwork, which is, you know, whatever. People have seen that before, I feel like. The only thing I'll say is, like, I'm not 100% confident that I meant to take acrobatics there. It is a hunch, but it's definitely not 100% confident. In this fight, I want to set up a pen nib with skewer, and that's basically my goal in the fight. I think the simple way to do that is just play 3 attacks this turn, and then we just wait until we draw skewer. I could also have played acrobatics and used well-laid plans if I drew skewer, and that would have been fine. But I figure I have a calculated gamble and stuff. This way should work. I have 2 choices here. I can calculate a gamble and have a 4 out of 5 to get skewer, or I could just play survivor defend, in which case I take 3 damage and then I win the fight. I'm happy to just take 3 damage. Doesn't seem like there's much wrong with taking 3 damage here. There's the escape plan that I was talking about that would prefer me to have a deadly poison than a poison stab. Poison stab was not super relevant against Gremlin Knob, was it? Escape plan would also quite like me to have the footwork, but actually acrobatics is very good with it as well. And I think I will upgrade... I think I'll upgrade calculated gamble. This Guardian fight's going to be going longer, and I'd like to be able to stack poison on it, and you might think, oh, stack poison, that means upgrade poison stab. But actually, I think calculated gamble lets me play poison stab more often, so ends up being the more appealing way to stack more poison. And this is just something about the strength of calculated gamble as a card that you'll start to pick up if you play with it a lot. Calculated gamble plus any other supporting card draw does some very, very ridiculous things. All right. In the Guardian fight, we're just trying to deal enough damage to avoid getting hit by the really big attacks when Guardian's in the more attacky stats. And other than that, just sort of vibing. When Guardian's in the shell stats, we're not expecting to deal tons and tons of damage. We're just trying not to get hit by the enemy too hard. That's fine. We take 1, but not the end of the world. Happy Flower is a very good relic that we picked up as well. I don't think I mentioned it, but definitely a very good one to have. You can go strike, strike, and pen nib a dagger spray to transform here. I don't see much reason to rush it, though. Another thing to learn about Guardian's AI is there are turns where it's threatening and turns where it's not threatening, and next turn it's never attacking me. So there's nothing like wrong with setting up to do nothing this turn because Guardian's doing nothing this turn. As it played, I happen to have set up to skewer for 66 on this turn, which is not doing nothing, but you know, I also could have just chilled out for a bit on that turn if I wanted to. There's no reason to be taking little damage in this fight because I full heal at the end of the act. But I guess it's like is just a thing that I am going to do, right? I'm going to try to min-max a fight even if I don't need to. I'm just somebody who's played a lot of Slay the Spire. The big things to care about as I leave this fight are actually pen nib and Happy Flower being on good numbers rather than my health being a certain thing. My health being a certain thing doesn't actually matter at all. So I want to kill next turn. And I want to play, I mean, I'd sort of like to play 2 attacks to do it, but if I only play 1, that's not the end of the world. Just take a look for neutralize just in case. And 1, 2. Perfect. Pen nibs on 9, happy flowers on 2. This is essentially the best that they can be. Wraith form. Gain 2 intangible at the end of your turn, lose 1 dexterity. Very strange card. Very hard to evaluate whether this card is good or not as a new player. The answer is yes, it's very, 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 very good. But you could be forgiven for not being confident about that. Burst and unload. Burst would be fun here with acrobatics and calculated gamble, and even escape plan. It would be fun with a deadly poison, but I don't have a deadly poison, I have a poison stab. I think just taking a Wraith form is like a fairly normal thing to do. I would say that when you're first starting out in Slay the Spire, the norm on Silent is to be scared of Wraith form and not take it. Then you get to a point where you're like, wait, this card's really, really, really good, and you start taking it almost every time. And then you slowly get to a point where you start to recognize that the character doesn't always need a Wraith form, and sometimes it just sort of gets in the way of a stronger thing that you're doing. I don't think we have a thing that's stronger than Wraith form right now, though, so we'll just take the Wraith form. Ectoplasm stopping me from gaining gold for the rest of the run is a bit of a downer with Meal Ticket, and I mean, just in general, gold is pretty good. Hovering Kite, there's nothing super wrong with taking this right now with an Acrobatics and a Calculated Gamble. A nice thing about taking Acrobatics very aggressively is that you get to take Hovering Kite whenever it's offered, basically. And it is, assuming you discard a card each turn, it is a 0 downside energy relic, although obviously that's a very optimistic assumption to make. I don't see anything wrong with the left path, so let's just go for it. I'm not trying to spend forever getting into every single minute detail of my pathing. I guess there was a downside there. If I just had 5 energy on that turn, I could have just killed that turn. But because I had to discard a card before I had 5 energy, I didn't get to kill. So yeah, I mean, there are some downsides. Reflex Plus is a fun card with what I'm doing. I don't see much reason not to take it. So let's just take it. I'm going to go to question marks over hallway fights, and I'd like card removes very much. Dagger Spray is in the deck. Somewhat because of how it interacts with this fight. I mean, look at how it interacts with this fight. It's kind of ridiculous. Right? That seems pretty good, yeah? At higher ascension, you need to attack them 4 times before they fall out of the sky, but at low ascension, attacking these birds 3 times will make them drop. Here's the Dagger Spray again. Yeah, nice thing about Calculated Gamble is you just get to play your best card over and over again. And what I'd like to do here is I'd like to kill this enemy with 1 attack next turn, so that my Pen Nib and Happy Flower are on the right numbers. Those small things do make a large difference. It actually is a really big deal. The Sneaky Strike Plus is my first attack that interacts really well with the fact that I'm drawing and discarding, so I'm going to go ahead and grab it. Maybe it's not necessary, but I think it's going to be fine. I wouldn't hate going to 2 shops. Frozen Eye is very powerful. Is actually an incredibly powerful relic. It does make for a very slow run. Maybe I'll show you a Frozen Eye run later. And for right now, just pass on that and go a different way. Panache would be fun, but I don't think I need it. Taking an Acrobatics and a card remove from that store is awesome in my opinion. So, I'm going to kill with Skewer pretty soon. I'm just going to basically not play attacks until then, I think is the plan. I'm likely to deal 66 damage with it. I wonder if I want to use a potion so that 66 damage will be lethal. I think it's fine. Some chance we get attacked again this turn. Didn't happen. That's good. Getting debuffed now, and this should kill, right? Just doing the acrobatics thing. I have Happy Flower on 2 again. My pen nib's not in the best spot, but that's okay. Catalyst is definitely one of Silent's most powerful damage options, and it is very good against Champ. I do have 1 poison to stab to support it. I think it is fine to take Catalyst here. I also already have Wraith Form. It takes me away from my acrobatics type of thing, but that would be okay. I just have the poison stab and the poison potion to apply poison, but those are pretty strong things. I don't have tons of dead weight in the deck. I already have 2 card removes. I have double acro, calculated gamble, escape plan, well-laid plan, so I can draw these cards. It's okay that I have a few attacks in it. Yeah, I think I'm just meant to take Catalyst. So probably that takes us away from the acrobatic spam and oh, never mind. Tough bandages. Whenever you discard a card during a turn, gain 3 block. This plus calculated gamble is just one of the strongest combos in the game. So I'm going to go ahead and buy another escape plan too, I think. Notice that I took that Wraith Form and have not really displayed any need to have it in my deck, which will happen. I haven't upgraded it yet, I haven't played it yet. Sometimes you just have stronger other things. So in the presentation, I talked about how debuffs are very good against Book of Stabbing. You saw Weak do a lot on that turn. I also talked about how Strength Down and the like were very good in this fight. You might notice that I don't have Strength Down, and this turn I haven't applied Weak to Book of Stabbing, and I'm just winning the fight very easily. And what I'd say to help like motivate an understanding of what's going on here is like this difficulty just isn't very high, basically. So at higher difficulty, this sort of strategy would have a lot more trouble getting through Book of Stabbing. But at this difficulty, the numbers are just lower. So it just, you know, works better. At higher difficulty, you're more and more forced into unique, clever solutions for things, while at low difficulty, doing something a little bit more linear will be punished a lot less often. I should probably take the Deadly Poison Plus so I can actually apply poison for my Catalyst. This deck, I think, has like won the run in 4 different ways. It's kind of fascinating to me. We have enough block with Wraith Form. We have enough block with Calculated Gamble. We have enough block with like Acrobatics, Card Draw, plus Escape Plan spam. Potentially. Not yet, but eventually. Another thing that might be good to note is how much easier it makes fights to have like Pen Nib on 9 at the start. Like, it was sort of useful for Pen Nib to be on 9 on that turn. Okay, we're gonna Calculated Gamble here. Yep. So I know that Gremlin Leader can never attack next turn, so there's not much reason to worry about holding on to block cards right now. I can just hold on to damage cards instead. Gremlin Leader's always going to summon a bunch of minions, and I have Dagger Spray ready to go when they arrive. Also, though, I think Gremlin Leader's just going to be dead. Yeah, so next turn, Gremlin Leader will die, and I'll try to put Pendant back on 9 again. Important to hold to defend as well, because otherwise it goes into my next draw pile, and I don't want to draw it in these 5 cards. Play 1, 2, 3 attacks, and Gremlin Leader dies to poison. Paper Crane's another very, very strong relic. I think when I was talking about all the ways I won the run, I forgot to mention Paper Crane, but that feels like another one of them. I don't need Reflex here. I don't have enough ways to discard it, and I don't have enough space in my hand. I'm drawing plenty of cards already. If I had another Calculated Gamble, it would probably be good to have, but I don't. And Calculated Gamble is an uncommon. It's hard to get particular uncommons every time. Bag of Prep's another very good relic. This is a very blessed run right now. I guess I will play Well-Laid Plans, and then I'll look for Dagger Spray. Perfect. Dagger Spray is going to be my solution to fights like this. Put poison on one of the ones with lots of health. We will hit one of the ones with less health with a strike. Next turn I will plan to use Wraith Form, and then they'll be dead by the time I stop being intangible. Actually, it looks like I don't need to use Wraith Form. Okay, cool. Well, that makes it even easier. Next turn I just have Dagger Spray again, so we get them set up to die to Dagger Spray. Actually, I'm going to only hold 1 card here, which doesn't really help in any way, but it's sort of nice to have a card less in hand so that I can do this and then discard Reflex and draw 1 more, but it's not, it's not a big deal. I'm just being fancy at that point. Alchemize. Alchemize is pretty strong, and I have 3 potion slots, so being able to get the best possible potions seems pretty nice. We got this again. This just happened last run, yeah? Let's do silly things with it. Last time I regretted not clicking another time. Shall I click another time? It is going to make me rest. It does feel like the ultimate choice, though. Alright, cool. Yeah, probably a good idea. Probably a good idea to rest after that. Welcome back to Jorbs completely disrespects Slay the Spire. In this fight, it's actually really hard to kill the Mystic because the Centurion has a thing that blocks for the Mystic. So it looks like the Mystic has significantly less health, but the way it feels to play the fight is actually like the Centurion has less health. So typically I try to kill the Centurion first. I think it's fine to use a potion here. It's also fine not to. 9. Yeah, I'm not taking damage. I want to remember that I have Alchemize in my deck so I can play it later. Playing Skewer there to put another charge on Pendib. As always in this run, always trying to pay attention to Pendib, get as much output from it as possible. This is fun. I'm getting the really strong stuff in my like casual How to Win at Spire series. I have to try to win so much harder in my runs that aren't in this series. Alright, I got a speed potion, which isn't like incredible. I could have powered out more damage there if I wanted, but I figured that it's going to take us 3 turns to kill, probably. I mean, we're going to want it to take 3 turns for us to kill, so that Happy Flower is ready to go for the next elite fight. I want to play 1, 2. I'll play 1 more attack at some point and burn 1 more turn. This should work perfectly. Okay, we'll see who these elites are. I got a power potion too, another reflex, a dagger throw. Tactician is unlocked, yeah. I was hoping to find a tactician at some point, but it has been a shy. Speed potion works really well with an artifact charge, but I haven't found one yet. It does feel like for this particular fight, I probably want have my potions set up like this. I think slavers could have potentially been threatening, but Book of Stabbing is not going to be a big deal. I have Penib, and I'm thinking about using it on Neutralize. It's probably not what I want to do. But that works fine. So I drew both of my acros early, which means I don't have much card draw left in my deck. Something to look out for. But I mean, this is completely fine, right? Okay. I'll hold on to Alchemize and trade my Exploding Pot for something else, because I don't think Exploding Pot's the most exciting thing anymore. This puts Happy Flower on 2. And then I just want to, I'm actually going to discard this instead of throwing it because I don't want to rush damage here. To play as many attacks as I can for Penib, which is not going to be tons. It's okay though. We don't have to set up Penib perfectly in like the elite fights. These should theoretically be the hard fights. I neutralize twice and then another one. Nice. Okay. Potion Belt. That's really nice with our Alchemize. And I'm being offered Catalyst number 2 and Calculated Gamble number 2, which are both obscenely strong here. I think that Calculated Gamble number 2 is more appealing to me, and now I'm in a place where I actually would be quite interested in taking a second reflex. So the goal is going to be to play Deadly Poison lots of times and then play Catalyst. It's a relatively simple goal. Guess I can play Poison Stab too, why not? Champ will cleanse all debuffs and enrage when it gets below half health, which is a pretty big thing to keep an eye on. I did a bad reshuffle there, but it's not a thing that I care about right now. It's fine. So when you're trying to kill Champ with Catalyst, you want to like stack up a bunch of poison, and then you want to put all of the poison on right as Champ gets close to 210 or at higher difficulty, 220 health. But right now I don't really want to like rush tons of damage out, because I'd rather spend a little bit of time stacking poison up so that my Catalyst is as valuable as possible when I get it played. So like, I'm not sure I even want to play this Sneaky Strike, for example. All looking pretty good. Magic number here is like about 40 poison, and then I can catalyst and win. There's catalyst. Sure. At this point, like, there's some value to just like letting my brain rest, and I think I'm going to sort of chill out on the tiny min-max stuff, and we'll just sort of vibe through the rest of the run, and then hopefully win it. So, if I were streaming right now, I'd start talking about some weird thing, book I was reading or something like that. As is, I guess I'll just like make noises with my mouth for a while. That is a dead champ. It's a very, very, very common way to win the champ fight. Die, bullet time phantasmal killer. There's nothing super strong here, and there's nothing that says that you have to take rare cards. You're allowed to just skip them. Die, you might think, wait, that's better than dagger spray, which is like sort of true, but it actually doesn't deal more damage because I have Vajra. And also, like, I took dagger spray in Act 1 because I wanted help killing the sentries and like the gremlin gang, right? At this point in the run, my deck is a lot stronger than it was when I felt like I had to take a dagger spray, and I don't feel like I have to take a die anymore. Empty Cage, Runic Pyramid, and Sacred Bark. Sacred Bark doubling the effectiveness of potions with 5 potions and an Alchemize is pretty strong. I think what I'm going to do here... So I think Runic Pyramid actually is a bit less exciting than usual right now because it's going to sometimes block my hand. I have a lot of cards in my deck that I never want to play. Like, I want to draw my calculated gambles as quickly as possible, basically, and play my Deadly Poison, and then eventually play my Catalyst. Basically, like the pattern that you just saw in the champ fight. And there are some fights where I need to play my Dagger Spray, and there are some fights where I want to get my Wraith form and stuff like that. But in general, I don't think Runic Pyramid's that strong here. I think I'd rather just take an Empty Cage. And yeah, I mean, that's just a judgment call that I'm making, that card removes are very, very strong in a deck like this, based on lots of experience playing decks like this. In fact, I think they're strong enough that I'm going to prioritize going to stores for card removes in this act over going to like every elite fight to get relics. But I guess we'll get to this node and then we can decide whether we want the 2 elite fights or the store and campfire. Definitely take these 2 shops at the end of the act. I have 853 gold, which is quite a lot. Right. I am looking for a dagger spray, I guess. I want to play it again. And next turn, I would like to play it again. Pretty basic deck in this fight. One Tactician to give me energy when I discard cards, and we're really rolling. Definitely didn't put Happy Flower on 2, but like I said in the champ fight, like, I think it's just time to vibe. That was a Tactician that I just got. I'm going to choose to upgrade it over taking Warped Tongues. I don't think that upgrading a random card in my hand every turn is anywhere near as important as just upgrading Tactician here. And yeah, now that I have a Tactician, this is going to be kind of ridiculous. And it really, really feels like that justifies my choice to take the empty cage as well. Whoops. Are these the right cards to be holding? Probably not. Probably not great cards to have chosen to be holding there. Alright, I've taken 1 damage. It's okay though. I put Penib and Happy Flower in the right numbers. That was more important to me. Could take a backflip. I don't really want to. I think I just block with the copies of Calculated Gamble. My worst potion is probably weak potion. Just have slightly too many cards clogging the deck. Yeah, I think another 3 card removes would do a lot here. Four even by the time I get to next act. Ah! Trying to press enter and I can't click the button. Oh my gosh. I don't need another well-laid plans. Just kind of gets in the way of my turn 1. I'm happy to have 1. I just don't really want to second for any reason. I think I drew all of my card draw, unfortunately, so yeah, I'm stuck with this. Let's use a power potion, because I don't see why not. 1,000 Cuts is a fun card. Trying to think of good other lessons from this run that don't just like end up being the same thing I've already talked about. I think it was perhaps interesting going through Act 2. Like, I took the Catalyst thinking that I'd deal tons of damage with poison, but then, like, when I got Tough Bandages and another Calculated Gamble, I was very solidly back on the idea that I was doing Calculated Gamble things. And the truth is that I'm, like, kind of doing both, which is allowed. I don't have to only deal damage with Catalyst and have that be the only strong thing that the deck can do. In this case, it is costing me a decent chunk to have both strategies in the deck because my like play acro over and over again strategy really doesn't like drawing other cards. But I mean, I'm still winning pretty comfortably. Choosing between Catalyst and Noxious Fumes here, I think just another Catalyst is fine. Noxious Fumes would also be okay, either option's fine. The fight where they're relevant is the Time Eater fight, which is the first boss. I'm going to want to kill this with poison, similar to how I killed Champ with poison. And I get to basically choose, do I want to do that by playing a Noxious Fumes early to stack up poison to make it really easy to play a Catalyst later, or would I prefer to do it by just having 2 Catalysts, which means that all I have to do is put 20 poison on Time Eater even would be enough, and then I'd Catalyst it twice to 180 and it would tick twice and kill easily. I don't even need 20 poison if I take 2 Catalysts. Whereas with 1 Catalyst, I sort of need 40 or 50 poison, which is like achievable with Noxious Fumes, but it definitely takes a little while longer. I do like that I can play Noxious Streams early in fights and it will do something and get out of the way of my acrobatics engine. I don't ultimately think it matters. I'm going to take Fumes. It's a cool card, I don't know. Let's take these two. They're pretty strong. And just remove a strike. This is 10 block on turn 1 is a really big deal. Turn 1 is the first turn of every fight. And then Toy Ornithopter with 5 potions in my belt and an Alchemize. Very, very, very powerful. That's a lot of extra health. So Writhing Mass changes its intent every time that I deal attack damage to it. Does not change its intent when I deal poison damage to it, though. Notably. And the big thing with Writhing Mass is just going to be avoiding having it curse me. Because it's not going to deal relevant damage here, but if it puts a curse in my deck, that's a bit of a drag. I assume it can curse you at low Ascension. I'm pretty sure it can. It would be weird if it couldn't. That's sort of like the defining move that this enemy has. Look at all these cards clogging my hand. Oof. The reason I'm not attacking there is just I'm happy with this intent. It's not dealing me damage and it isn't cursing me, so there's no real reason for me to mess with it. Now the fight's over. Energy Potion came back, another Deadly Poison, don't think I need it. There's a Corpse Explosion here, which is a very strong card, which I also don't think I actually need. Energy Pot over Block Pod should be fine. Let's just recall here. I don't know exactly what I want to upgrade. Maybe I'll get something that could use an upgrade later. Get the Sapphire Key. Oh my god, I got another store. Okay. I'm just going to press card remove in 4 stores in a row. It's going to get really expensive. I didn't actually do the math on whether I'd be able to afford that or not. I might end up finding out that I can't afford it. I feel like that'll be impressive, though, if I manage not to be able to afford it. Something to celebrate instead of be ashamed of. Noxious Fumes does kind of okay in this fight. Use another energy pot. Use an attack pot. Kill that. Deadly Poison, Catalyst. I just pen-nibbed my kill on that. That's funny. Also, I used Catalyst sooner than I should have, perhaps. Actual incoming damage, like for real. This is a pretty bad hand, obviously. Drew both of my discard cards without any things to discard them with. One of the problems with not having played well-laid plans at the start of the fight. Kind of happened again. Okay, so a note from that fight, it's probably a good idea to put well-laid plans in play when I draw it. Pori is powerful. Reflex, yeah, probably. Now that I have 2 Calculated Gamble, I think the second Reflex goes up in value. I definitely don't have enough gold for clicking the card remove button 3 times. I think what I'll do is get this medkit, because against the heart, that's actually like 2 card removes. And then there's not much reason not to click the card remove button once here, but unfortunately it doesn't look likely that I'll have enough gold for it again next act. Could remove an attack maybe. I'm not going to want to play defense though either. So I'm like very heavily prioritizing card remove. I took a relic that card removes. I bought card remove in stores. And the goal is just to make it so I can match my reflexes and tacticians with cards that discard them, basically. Did I just say basically twice? I was watching a video from another streamer, and he just said basically like 5 times over the course of the video, and he couldn't make himself stop, and he kept on like bringing attention to it. Kept on saying, "Oh my gosh, I've said basically again," and I was like, "Yep, you have." Kind of funny. Play Wraith form here. Next turn, I am going to likely have a broken hand. Oh, nice, I drew Acro. Nice, okay, we win. If I had had a broken hand, though, being intangible would have been nice. You can definitely see, I assume, I can certainly see how Wraith form has not been very relevant in this run. Not that I like regret taking it or anything, it's just it didn't end up being the run where it was going to be very strong. Now we do some really silly things. This is why I was prioritizing card removes. This is not technically infinite. At some point, I could draw all of the cards in an order that made it so I stopped doing this, but it's like pretty close. And with well-laid plans to set up the start of my turns, it's very unlikely for me to ever have a particularly bad turn. I don't really need another escape plan. I think it just kind of is another card that I have to click on in the time meter fight, which isn't actually good. Yeah, slightly short on gold for a card remove. I'm not going to be getting more gold before the next shop, so I'm never getting more than this. I just take Abacus. Honestly, don't need that. Blur would be kind of fun. I just skip and we'll look for something in the next shop. How about that? So even though my deck is spamming lots of cards, there is no reason whatsoever to be afraid of Time Eater here. I'll upgrade Wraith form because why not? Against Time Eater, I'm largely going to win the fight off of well-laid plans and Noxious Beams. Go ahead and play that. Play this, and yeah, the plan is just when I get attacked, I play Calculated Gamble. When I draw Deadly Poison, I play it. Otherwise, I mostly just watch the poison tick up and I win. I didn't play Deadly Poison there. I guess I have misled you. It wasn't because I didn't want to, it was because I didn't notice it was in my hand. if it's any help to helping you trust me again. Okay, this isn't a very good hand. Yeah, this will happen, I guess. With Tori, I take exactly 3 damage for having such a bad hand, so really not the end of the world. Oh my gosh. This is that bad draw order that I was talking about. I can actually play Wraith form here because my dexterity doesn't actually matter. I'm blocking with Calculated Gamble, so it just doesn't matter for my dexterity to be bad. Also, the fight's going to be over pretty soon anyway. Okay, sure. So Time Eater will hit 50% at 228? Why is the number so weird? Weird number. So I need to line up my catalyst accordingly. Which means I could probably go this turn. Or if I don't go this turn, I go next turn. But this turn seems completely fine. With my other damage cards helping. Yeah, that's already lethal. The Time Eater will cleanse this poison and stuff, but the poison will tick before Time Eater gets the cleanse off. And that's the fight. I guess it's right to play attacks for Pendant, but I've talked already a little bit about how I'm just not going to bother. Just going to vibe. You deal 968 damage. I honestly forgot that there wasn't a second boss. Used to there being a second boss after the first Act 3 boss. Oh well. Let's play Act 4. So I think most decks that I build that get to Act 4 are going to beat it very easily in this challenge. I'm generally aiming for a deck that can beat Act 4. I mean, it does feel like I don't have enough card draw for this. I think if I played my deck a little bit more carefully, I would. Let's just change our potions instead. It only costs 37. Okay. Okay, I can't not click it. Yeah, if you're not used to building for Act 4, probably it's regularly a struggle, but I have played so many Act 4s, and my Act 4s that I've played have generally been at much higher difficulty than this too. So, a huge benefit of building a deck that doesn't have many chaff cards in it and has lots of card draw is that on this turn, which is a very, very threatening turn, you're just not in much trouble. Also, apparently at low ascension, the burns go in your discard pile instead of on top of your deck, so that's something that I just discovered. I think I already knew that. That makes the turn a lot less scary. Like a lot less scary. At high ascension, the burns get put on top of your draw pile, so you draw your card for the turn, and the first two cards are burns. I have Twitter open on my other monitor, which is probably terrible for my mental health. Gosh. Twitter, not even once. It's kind of fun to get to play decks like this at higher ascension. I'd be a little bit more threatened by the enemies and might not get to put something like this together as often. Although I think this run would have gone this way at high ascension too. I got very strong cards and relics to support me doing something like this, and I could have chosen to do something else as well, but I think if I'm given these cards and relics, I'm probably going to build this on every difficulty level. Gambling chip, very, very, very strong with what we're doing. Play poison again, seems fine. I have an awful lot of potions I could be using right now if I wanted to. not be a terrible idea. Okay, I'm going to skill pot in case I get burst. Unlucky. I guess malaise would have been good. I'm going to go next turn. Nothing wrong with just playing Wraith form this turn. Oh, actually, there is something wrong. I won't have enough energy to. Oh, I got lucky. If I'd drawn Void, it would have been difficult to play Wraith form this turn, actually. Would have had to do something else, perhaps. That being said, like, it's attacking me for 12. So I think I'm just not going to play Wraith form. It looks like it's attacking me for more than 12, but it isn't actually. On account of Tori. I guess Tori doesn't stop it from dealing more damage to block, but yeah, I take 10 total. Not a big deal. What just happened? That was very strange. Sometimes the game's a bit buggy still. I should probably have played the Void so I wouldn't draw it and lose energy again. Hindsight is 20/20, as they say. Okay, and now I'm going to play the Wraith form and press end turn and win. Wait, am I not going to play the Wraith form? I don't remember. I think I wanted to prove that I didn't need the Wraith form, maybe. I mean, it feels already proven. Yeah, whatever. We won't play the Wraith form, and we will press end turn and win. I'm being attacked for 24. This heart is just, I don't know. I don't know. It's a lot scarier at high ascension. All right, well, anyway, GG. I hope you enjoyed that run. And to talk about Act 2 Elites, I will see you next time with Defect. Let's check out the score and the unlocks. Always nice to watch the victory cutscene. On stream, I like to watch the full credits too, which is a nice way to like thank the devs and everybody else who worked on this game for making such an awesome thing. I mostly do it so I have an excuse to walk around, though, to be honest. So, I mean, right now I can just end the video and then go walk around. It's not really a problem for me at the moment. I've unlocked Duvu Doll, Smiling Mask, and Tiny Chest. Alright, so 3 more relics. Nothing super, super remarkable. Thanks for tuning in, everybody, and I hope to see you next time with the Defect Run.